The Football Show on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch every live Premier League game this season on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then.
What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Now, welcome along, Football Show. Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent, before he jets off to Qatar, is with us. Good evening, hello.
Evening, Joe.
When are you flying out?
Well, I'm going to Malta on Friday for the Ireland-Malta game, which of course is the event in world football that everyone is actually talking about this week, and then on to Qatar on Monday.
Okay. When is the Malta game?
Sunday evening.
Okay.
Yeah.
It'll be better than Qatar, Ecuador.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is it. Yeah, I mean, cleaner. You know,
Much cleaner.
But
less complicated.
It's the essence of international football is Ireland playing Malta. Yeah, it's that's Sunday evening. That's sort of a weird day for I think it's back to back on RTE. I presume it is. You know, that the show is sort of the World Cup opener, and then let's go to Malta for Ireland's friendly. It's almost like a real here's what you could have won type thing.
Marcela Mora-Irahu will join us later on in the show. It's that lovely time now, World Cup time, where we start reaching out across the world. So Marcela's in Argentina. Argentina have won 35 games in a row. They have never arrived at a World Cup so at peace and so confident and so hopeful. So
have they won 35 in a row?
They're 2 off Italy's all-time record.
Oh God! It's funny now. Like you get into that research mode. I was in sort of thinking they were unbeaten or something. They actually won them.
Oh, sorry, unbeaten. Did I say won?
He did say win.
Bit of a difference. Still, though.
No, still a good record. I mean, like, I think there isn't one of the theories about it is that I think Tim Vickery's been making this point, maybe amongst others, maybe haven't played a huge amount of European sides in that run. But still, I mean, that includes it does include winning the Copa America and sort of eking it out. You know, but you consider, and again, and like this is the thing, you know, you no matter how much you try to keep on top of everything going on in world football, the sort of vagaries of qualifying campaigns and sort of South America and the evolution of teams, for me anyway, personally, it's a 4-year thing. Yeah. But Argentina were such a rabble in 2018.
Well, that was Jorge Sampaoli. I don't want to preempt
the piece, yeah.
Thunder, but Lionel Scaloni was the assistant manager in that 2018 cycle where Argentina were knocked out in the last 16. A rabble. And he was given the job on an interim basis. You know, you are Sampioli's assistant, so just mind the house for a few months and we'll sort something out. 4 years later, he went in and sorted things out better than anybody had envisaged, and he's still the manager. And what's interesting about Scaloni is he's in his 60s now. He had never been a manager of a team in his life before. Assistant manager all the way. And then 4 years ago became interim manager and hasn't looked back.
What was Yogi Love's managerial prowess before he took? Like, he was under Klinsmann, and then he sort of took over and became a sort of a dynasty, led by him. I'm not sure how he managed before. Actually, I have no idea. I'm off the top of my head there, but it's funny how you just land someone in that role and suddenly it fits.
You're a horseman.
Yes,
a horse person.
I mean, not a horse whisperer, but I would be fond of the horses,
on
the sport, and also the animal.
South American European divide.
Yeah.
Tell me if this works for you. I'm not on as firm a ground in horse racing.
Okay.
But so, as Vickery says, we've, for the first time in half a century, we arrive at this World Cup where there was a genuine mystery as to how the European sides and the South American sides are faring against each other. They haven't played each other very often on account of COVID. We saw Argentina beat Italy in La Finalissimo thingy 3-0, but I mean, who knows what that is. So this strikes me as South America can be Willie Mullins and Europe can be
Paul Nicholls.
I would think the opening rounds there'll be a degree of Cheltenham day one. Which yard is in better shape here? Imagine all the South American sides beat all the European sides in the first round of group stages. We'll be saying Willie Mullins' boys. Suddenly Brazil, Argentina, their stock will rise and there'll be a question mark over the European sides. I think
I've heard worse analogies than that. Now,
thank you, Dan.
To be clear, I've heard better ones. But I mean, but like to take that point to the end, it's like you'll watch Ecuador. Now you've got a line into Qatar, Ecuador. Because if Ecuador suddenly do a job in Qatar, it's like the South American form is really strong.
But
Like
Qatar then.
home team, you know, the team, like you sort of, every time you say, no, they're not going to be that good. Now, in fairness, South Africa went out, didn't they? Like, you know, it does happen. But you always assume there's going to be that extra percent. And I mean, okay, maybe not against Ecuador, but I mean, the conditions and various elements, you know, will be, they might help them. But I see your point, yeah.
Okay. We'll push on. We're going to talk some England later on. So we're trying to get into the football now. Dan and I have some things to say about England, I'm sure. Marcelo will talk Argentina. Philippe has been on the show talking France. And tomorrow, Mr. Tim Vickery will come in and talk Brazil and some of the other South American sides. Ronaldo.
I mean, yeah, like how can we get on with the business of the World Cup without the business of a person who might believe they are bigger than it?
Let's keep this brief because interest levels, I think, are waning if they were even all that interested to begin with. So Piers Morgan is continuing to seed out the clips. He knows how to generate buzz, I'll give him that. So it's going to be across 2 shows on Wednesday and Thursday. I thought it was all going to be in one batch. Much of last night's show was Piers talking to Graham Souness in studio and Henry Winter as well about all things Ronaldo. So it's Ronaldo week on that show, as you might imagine. The latest clip concerns Ronaldo on Gary Neville and Wayne Rooney. We will have a listen now.
Critics has been one of your biggest critics has been, and I'm surprised about this.
Me too.
Wayne Rooney,
For example,
who you played with for many years very successfully and were good friends with him, and yet all this year 3 or 4 times he's come out and attacked you in the media.
Pierce, I don't understand. You should ask this question to him, but I don't know. I don't know why he criticized me so bad. Or
is it jealousy as well, perhaps, that you're still playing and still in the Man United
probably
red shirt?
Because he finished his career with 30s, so I'm still playing high level. I'm not gonna say that I'm looking better than him, which is true, but
that is inarguable. I mean, there's no contest.
It's hard to listen that kind of criticize and negative about people who play with you. For example, Gary Neville as well.
Yeah, I mean, Gary Neville, you blanked him the other day on the pitch, and he looked quite upset, actually, because he obviously likes being your friend, but he's been pretty critical of you as well.
The people can have his own opinion, but they don't really know what's going on, for example, inside the training ground and Carrington area, or even my life. They should listen not only one point of view, they have to listen my point of view as well, because it's easy to criticize, but if you don't know the whole story, it's easy, you know. But it's, Piers, as I say before, it's part of...
Are they still friends of yours, or do you have a line where...
They are not my friends.
Do you feel a bit betrayed when they do that, because you played together?
It's easy to criticize. I don't know if they have a job in television that they must criticize to be more famous. I really don't understand.
Do you think they use your name a bit to get attention?
I think they take advantage of that because they are not stupid. And I really understand, and I have to carry on with my life with criticize or when the people speak good about you. But it's hard when you see people who was in the dressing room with you criticizing that way.
It must hurt
It's
you.
not good. Yeah. Yes, I did. But not hurt me. I'm not going to be more slim. I'm not going to sleep bad because of the criticize. But it's not good to listen that.
Disappointing.
A little bit, yes. Disappointing.
So Ronaldo there, happily being led by Piers every step of it. Do you think he's jealous?
Yeah, I mean, it's just terrible, really, isn't it? But I mean, and also like this concept, I mean, unfortunately, are they still your friends? I mean, how many footballers do you talk to? I mean, how many of them even end up with any friends out of the game?
I'll tell you who he still loves. Roy Keane, best captain ever. That's coming your way tomorrow. Rio Ferdinand, a neighbour, very, very good man. That they supported me publicly on television, irrelevant.
There's a bit of something of a parallel there. I can't figure out what puts that all together, yeah.
Do you know what struck me as well? The way Piers Morgan referenced you blanked Neville the other day suggested that was very fresh in the memory. And I heard Piers Morgan interviewed, and he was asked when this interview with Ronaldo happened, and it was about to answer, and then he said, I'm not going to reveal that. So that would suggest to me this was recorded very shortly after he blanked Neville a couple of weeks ago, and they've been sitting on it for these past 2 weeks for maximum impact.
Yeah.
Not that that's a crucial aspect of the story, but this isn't just some kind of emotional, I must do this interview this very week, Piers, and put it out there. This is strategic in every step of the way.
Yeah, like maybe not crucial in terms of the bottom line, but probably crucial to his employers in the context of how they deal with this.
So most of his Manchester United teammates will have 5 weeks to cool down if they're unhappy and never see Ronaldo again. The kitchen staff will have 5 weeks to cool down until they see Ronaldo again, if they see him again. The man who has the most glorious temper in world football had 24 hours to cool down. He had not cooled down. Bruno Fernandes handshake ate. It lacked the naked disdain of a Brian Cody at his best, but it was still very striking.
Do you think he was angry or disappointed?
Angry.
Think
Bruno
angry?
Fernandes.
Yeah, well, no, sorry, yeah, but I mean, in
Perpetually
terms
angry.
of the delivery of the handshake and the stare, like I mean, he still did shake his hand.
I think angry, but Ronaldo is such an alpha, especially in that dressing room, and it's the World Cup, so I think that's Fernandes creating as much incident as you could possibly dare on the eve of World Cup.
I'm sure you don't have the answer to this question, but I mean, have we established why there was a camera crew there for the moment?
They weren't anticipating that moment. I guess it's World Cup.
Behind the scenes, like
national
we're in the
interest,
dressing room,
yeah,
here they are.
Teams arriving, it's all good fun, you know.
But they were they in a dressing room
Sort of.
or locker room?
Maybe
Like,
just
when's the last time you saw,
it's like their training camp base, you know. I would think national media are given that kind of nice access across this week, but they weren't anticipating that moment. Like, it's absolute gold to get it.
It is amazing.
We would have speculated. I wonder what Fernandez' reaction was, and we would have said, it's probably fine. Turns out it wasn't. The 12-second news cycle being what it is, the handshake's old news. We're now onto the training ground today, where the cameras were locked on Fernandes and Ronaldo. They were waiting for some part of the session to continue, some drill or other, and they were circling each other's space without getting anywhere near each other's space or having any kind of eye contact. Now, a lot's been read into that, to be fair.
Could be normal.
Most of the players weren't making eye contact with each other. There was a degree of waiting around. But it's going to be a lot of fun in Portugal for the next couple of weeks.
Oh, I mean, like, it's I suppose, like, I mean, the whole idea of this tournament being so close to the end of, like, not to be sandwiched in the middle of the sort of the main club season, but I mean, the extent to which the Premier League soap opera is like all consuming in football now, it's sort of ridiculous, but that it could so sort of nakedly sort of overshadow like the sort of the football aspect of this World Cup at this point. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You always try to be a little bit sort of a bit skeptical and think, footballers are so pragmatic that they just get on with it eventually, because, is Bruno Fernandes that affronted by all of this, really, in the sense that, like, it's a selfish gig where everyone ultimately, like, looks after themselves to some degree, and he wants to win a World Cup and you get over it. But I don't know, it just feels like it was more believable than maybe some sort of charade stuff you can see in both good and bad in front of the cameras.
What struck me about it, the big conclusion that you could draw, is this: Bruno Fernandes does not think Ronaldo has been betrayed or mistreated in any way. That, for me, is the headline takeaway. If he had seen Ronaldo screwed around by the manager, if his feeling was the club had shown Ronaldo a lack of empathy over his children, if he had seen various things which suggest, you know what, he's been a bit messed around, he's entitled to have a bite back, then I think there would have been a warmer handshake.
Yeah, no, I think, and you've Bruno Fernandes, who obviously spoke out about Qatar the other day, sort of used his platform to try and sort of, I don't know, send out a message of some degree. So maybe he's I don't know, I still feel like you're analysing a clip here, and could have something different have happened 30 seconds later. So that little note is there, but you're sort of thinking, is this someone who's like a bit emboldened to think, I've got my own voice now and I'm not afraid to use it.
As for how it all plays out, big picture, I mean, I've talked too much about this already with Pat Nevin last night and Mark Critchley last night, so I've given my opinions at length. The short version is, it's just a case now of how club and player manage the exit plan. It's over. Jason Burt's reporting there in the Irish Independent and across the water as well, that really the big question is, does the remainder of his contract get paid out? As in, I don't know how long he has to run, but he's on $500,000 a week plus. Does he get that? Clubs say absolutely no way. But legally, they have to be able to stand over that. So the club are investigating whether they can get rid of him without giving him any more money. Is the latest.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just it all comes down to that, right?
Yeah.
It comes down to the nature of the handshake, and the club don't want. Well, I don't know what's happening, but like the club naturally will not want to pay out a big amount of money. Although the club is probably still selling a fair bit of Ronaldo merchandise even this week. I'd say no matter what happens, you know. So yeah, like football, like even at that level, eventually there's always a point. You know, there's always a number. It's like you cover the live golf thing or something. There's always a number. They'll hit a number eventually, because presumably it can't end any other way.
No, I don't think so. FAI Cup final at the weekend on Sunday. So a 4-0 win for Derry against Shelbourne. We had Duffer in a suit. It had all the trappings. In the build-up, people were, I would think, accentuating the fact that across the 4 games there was only 1 goal on aggregate between these sides. Derry had won 2 games. There'd been a draw. Shelbourne had won a game. In a bid to not sell it in a dishonest way, but I think in a sense this is a cup final. Anything can happen, and they've had close run encounters before. That was the blue corner versus 25-point gap in the league, and the latter definitely won out. It was more that kind of a game. Yeah,
listen, I thought Derry would win, but I thought they'd win after extra time. Like that was my sort of prediction. I thought
anyone can predict extra time in an FA
Cup final. 9 out of the last 12, but I thought they'd wear them down. But it was the opposite. I mean, like even from the first minute, there was a sense of like this pitch will play to their strengths. Like Derry, are a good footballing side, and they play on a bad footballing pitch at home, and their home form has actually killed them this year. And their actual record, when they get to a good venue, decent surface, is pretty good. And really, they used the width of the pitch well with some selection decisions. They passed it well, and Shells, the underdog, needed to do everything right. Like they needed to execute everything perfectly. And I think I've sort of made the point. It was almost a bit like sort of watching like a League of Ireland club in Europe against sort of a superior team where they're trying to do everything right, but quality just wins through. You can have a game plan to do it, but sometimes you're just execution of some of these tasks. And like they conceded bad goals, but they were patently the second best team. And they'll be annoyed about the goals they conceded, but it wasn't against the run of play, or the 25-point difference was reflected in the football. But so different kind of cup final, sort of a flat second half, whereas often it's sort of it's a bad first half and then it builds towards a dramatic conclusion sort of inevitably. It went the other way, but
felt over at half time.
It did, yeah, but it was, I mean, I have to say, I'm not sure if it sort of was came across sort of on the TV or whatever, but the real sense of Derry being a bit of a rebirth of Derry City was very visible around the ground, like just in the stadium. I don't know, they don't give necessarily the breakdown of like say Club A v Club B, but like there was a serious Derry attendance, and like they were in cup finals in 2012, 2014, and they reckon it's like double the travel and support from then. Like various combinations of factors, a lot of popular local players back, local owner now a billionaire backing them, post-COVID this crowd spike, all these various things. Rory Higgins tempted back, from the Ireland staff, but that club, when it booms, like it really, it's huge in its locality, and its potential is sort of limitless, really. So it was a great day for them.
Yeah, maybe the start of a serious era kicking off. Ireland-Norway Thursday. Erling Haaland played his part. He allowed a fair portion of tickets to be sold before he withdrew.
Oh God, yeah. I really hope now, like as I said, I'm not like how can we talk about Ireland and instantly talk to like Stephen Kenny debates? But it's just like, I think there has to be some acknowledgement that like a large number of tickets sold for this game is not just a reflection of interest in the Irish team, which it is. I mean, I think the crowds have been excellent, and that's one of the strongest things in Kenny's corner. But there's no doubt a lot of the advanced ticket sales would have had a Haaland angle to it, and all the promotion of this game, any discussions I think publicly and privately people in the FAI were having around this game were very Haaland orientated.
Well, every parent in the country was asked the question, please can we please?
Yeah.
So what kind of team is Stephen Kenny going to play?
Yeah, probably like from the stuff so far this week, no real like joint clues, but I think just more so listening to what Stephen Kenny said over the last period of time, around the draws and in general. He was cold on the idea of doing massive experimentation in this window. I think his whole point is now, I mean, like Ireland are playing France in March. Like, a big game. There might be a friendly before it, but effectively, the next gathering for this group is France coming to town. And as a result, it's his thing is they've built a team towards a particular style, identity, formation. I don't think you're going to see, oh, let's just try out sort of 3, 4, 5, 6 players here. I think it'll be as strong as possible against Norway, maybe in Malta Sunday, the game that'll stop the world. It'll be a little bit different, but I think in Norway you'll see, I suppose, close to whatever you think the Irish strongest 11 may be.
Okay. We're going to take a short break. We're going to talk some England in just a few moments' time. Marcela Mora-Irahu is going to join us as well this football show to talk Argentina, 35 games unbeaten ahead of the World Cup. Our football coverage and Off the Ball brought to you by Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. Back in one moment.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch big games from the Women's Super League live on Sky Sports.
This is News Talk.
Welcome back. World Cup starts on Sunday, Qatar, Ecuador. I'll be honest with you, Dan, my first thought there was, well, I'm skipping day one.
Do you want to see the ceremony? No, I mean, it's not all part of the story in some ways.
I'll be skipping day one. My one hope for the World Cup is David Beckham is forced to be at stadiums and is booed roundly every time he's shown on camera.
When's
That's increasingly becoming my main hope for this World Cup.
When's that? Isn't there a comedian that's going to shred 10,000 quid if he doesn't?
Beckham doesn't renege on the deal, yeah.
Has he put a date in it? Joe Lycett, isn't it? Or,
Eve of the World Cup, yeah. Now I'm seeing he's getting quite a backlash as well, that of all the stunts to pull, you shredding 10 grand's helping nobody right now.
Yeah, I suppose it is.
But it has to be a stunt to generate
it's a
publicity.
headline grabbing one. Yeah.
Beckham is coming under massive pressure at the moment online. Whether he's aware of any of that, I don't know.
I don't know. Like he's got such a team around him. Like, how could he not be aware of it? You know.
I wouldn't say he's against searching his name the odd time.
Oh my God, it'd take him a fair bit of time, wouldn't it?
Just do the top tweets.
Yeah, no, this is it. Yeah, like, turn off your, just your close friends only sort of mentions or whatever.
Verified or something.
Yeah.
Although even that's not pretty at the moment. He's getting it from everywhere. So Qatar, Ecuador is on the Sunday, and then Monday 1 o'clock. It is the nice stage. Look, for all the ills of this World Cup, we've talked about them a lot. It is at the nice stage where it's now so close that I'm starting to think about the structure of my week next week, even from a work point of view. So 1 o'clock on Monday, England will get things rolling. They play Monday, Friday they've USA, Tuesday they have Wales. So first up on Monday, 1 o'clock kickoff. There is a now or never quality to the Gareth Southgate situation. Gary Lineker, for instance, in quite a few of the papers, is talking about how Gareth's earned the right to fail, which I think is a very interesting framing of the situation. There is a sense that Southgate is too negative, that they're not on the right track, and that the kindest thing you can say is, well, he's earned the right to make a mess of this. He's earned that right. And, we've talked about his achievements at length. World Cup semi-finals, the draw was definitely very kind. Euros final on penalties, although tactically really outdone by Mancini in the final in particular, and very, very safe for the rest of the tournament. And publicly he's explained why he's so safe. He thinks it is the way to play tournament football. I mean, in his defence, it is worth reminding yourself just how bad England have been at World Cups past. 2014, so before he got to the semi-final, Roy Hodgson, group stages. Kind of forget Roy oversaw we didn't get out of our group campaign. 2010, round of 16, as good as it got. Memories of Mesut Ozil scampering down the line and Gareth Barry helpless.
Yeah,
Frank Lampard's
I was
goal,
there, as they say.
Yeah, so that was an embarrassing day. 02 and 06, the best that the Golden Generation managed, quarter-final. And then 98, which I think lives in the memory because it was such an epic game against Argentina. You could be fooled into thinking that was deeper in the tournament. That was round of 16. And then, of course, 94, not there. So that is the modern history that Southgate's competing with. So semi-final and European final, as negative maybe as it's been, as conservative, he has earned the right to fail.
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, I think I mentioned previously that documentary, the Italian 90 documentary, which would have finished last night, and like it's pretty much around England's 1990 campaign, and even the coverage of the semi-final, and it was pointed out, like, in 1990, like, this is the first time England have reached a World Cup semi-final outside of their own country. Yeah. So I mean, you've basically covered the rest of, you've gone back to 94, but every other tournament prior to that, apart from 66, they never made it any further than, never made it to the Final Four. Now they've done a Final Four and a final of the Euros. Yeah. I mean, it's history will be kind no matter what happens, I think.
But it is interesting. I'm sure you picked up on the sense that fans have really turned on Southgate.
Oh yeah,
we're like the outsiders who are commenting from afar and saying things like, well, Martin O'Neill, couldn't have done a better job, really, with Ireland.
That's very true. It's well, you always feel it more when it's your own side in some way, because ultimately, like you always think of the possibilities of what could be with this team, you know. And I don't know. I suppose with Southgate, it's not as if he's gone from being like the hero Gareth to being questioned. I think there would have obviously been some dissenting voices even when he made it all the way to the Euros final, pointing out, well, you know, what about some of his tactical decisions when they were ahead, you know, and there was negativity. They did play pretty much all of their games at home apart from one in that tournament. Like, you know, you can spin it in whatever way you want, but I know what you're saying about earning the right to fail. Like,
Gary Lineker said it.
Yeah, like, well, sorry, what Lineker is saying about this, that I don't know. I think part of the World Cup build-up this year is like where we're different. Like, we are immersed in the Nations League, whereas you see with the likes of England and France and a couple of the bigger nations, like they're almost, I don't know. It just isn't a big deal in their world, and they've used it to sort of
experiment,
do a few different things. Now they've had horrendous results. I mean, the French ones have been worse than England's.
Well, England relegated hasn't gone down well, and there was definitely in one of the more recent games where they were losing 2 or 3-0 to Germany at Wembley, and they came back spectacularly. I mean, they were just electric then for about 15 minutes, and it was a 3-3 draw. But I dare say, if they hadn't had those electric 15 minutes, there would have been serious debate in the aftermath. So it's been that kind of a situation bubbling away.
Actually, sorry, their results actually have been worse than France. Now to remind me of the Hungary stuff, but it feels like, though, I do see the point about why, like, he has an ethos. He believes in something, and actually, when you see him in the last couple of weeks, like, he brings Madison into the squad that no one really expects him to do. You're thinking, are you sort of reacting to like criticism here, or is this what you believe? You know, we've had this with Grealish at times. Like, how much does he really believe in Grealish when it comes down to it?
He said in his press conference he had decided a month ago Madison was in the squad. Didn't say it publicly, but that's what he said in his press conference. I go back and forth on his approach. Like, I think that very negative tournament football, Trent Alexander-Arnold can't play for me in a knockout game, that's not going to age very well in between cycles. Or they're going to perform very well in between cycles. When England are playing teams they should be beating routinely. So but I do see the logic that we're going to be really tight, we're going to be really conservative, and we're going to pick teams off. And yeah, it's not super expansive, but there is a logic in that approach at tournament football, and it's less exciting for the other 90% of the job. I mean, if you think of the Euros last year, one of the real talking points was Harry Kane's form. He was searching for form for much of those Euros and never really lit on fire. But he pitches up here. I know Conte has said he's fatigued, which is a worry, I'm sure. But he's at his peak age at 29. He's 2 behind Rooney's record of 53. He has scored 14 goals in 23 for Spurs, and he's often a slow starter to a season. So he started by his standards really well. I mean, England last summer playing defensively. The only real difference this year will be that I would think Calvin Phillips will come out and Bellingham will go in, but will still be asked to be every bit as disciplined for the most part as Calvin Phillips was. But an in-form Harry Kane massively increases how dangerous they are.
Yeah, absolutely. See, if you have like sort of a certain degree of quality at the top end of the pitch, like you can get away with sort of a degree of organisation elsewhere. It's just at times, like, as you said, it's the overall English sort of the parts all fused together. I mean, now you have a situation with England where you talk about that, but there's real concerns about the form and sort of quality of their defence, you know, and the capability to make individual mistakes is there. So if you become a team that your fundamentals suddenly become a weakness for you, then that's sort of that's a problem.
It's true.
You know?
I mean, for a lot of the Euros, so the team people are guessing at, the 11 they'll go with come Monday: Pickford in goal, back 3 seems to be order of the day because they don't have centre halves in good enough form. Stones, Dyer, and I would guess Harry Maguire, and then Trippier will get the nod at right wing back, Shaw left wing back, Bellingham and Rice sit. Those 7 won't budge very far, and then it will be up to, I'm presuming, Mount, Foden, Kane, with Sterling off the bench. You 3 do your stuff. Now, occasionally, look, Shaw got forward, scored the goal in the final, but in the main, through a lot of that tournament, even their wing backs didn't offer very much. It was you 3 do your thing.
you'd imagine Saka will have a role to play in some shape or form.
he came
but
off the bench a year ago.
you'd imagine he has the potential to be involved. And Bellingham is a big thing for them in the sense of being a better all-round midfielder than Phillips, and that's
Might
clearly
release him a bit.
Yeah, and he just has a better sort of skill set potentially. And like Phillips, obviously, he's been carrying an injury.
Yeah.
Kyle Walker's sort of been carrying an injury as well. Like he's sometimes a sort of very effective sort of option for them, even in the back three. To give them that sort of bit of pace in the back three as well too. So there's just a few, but Eric Dyer's form lately, you're looking at him going, So like they're one of these teams actually where the way across the tournament you see things changing, and I think with the form of one or two of the players you've mentioned there, you wouldn't be surprised if by the end of it there's a sort of a different set of characters coming to the fore. I mean, and ultimately with this, like, it comes down to the draw, right? I mean, you can talk about sort of the how you sort of shape and how you see a team looking, but they're in that group of what Wales, Iran and the USA, and the USA are capable enough. Like, they've got some good players, but it's still a group where England will fancy themselves. Wales arguably coming towards the end of a cycle in terms of the age profile of some of their better players, and then they're sort of paired up with that like potentially Senegal in the round of 16, and if Sadio Mane is not there, like, there's just you can see them get into the quarterfinals here. You know what I mean? And then
they'd having to overly
and
exert
then
themselves.
they're a team who in a knockout game have the capability to.
Well, that's when Gareth Southgate will be turning around to all the moaners who will suddenly be saying, well, it's important we keep things tight for the first 15, and he'll be saying, that's what I'm trying to do for the last 4 years.
Yeah,
keep things tight. That's why I'm here.
But the other thing about it is like, I mean, these opening games are significant because they said they just have the errors they have in their ranks and the sort of slight feeling of like, is the confidence a bit shaky in the defensive areas. Like, what if they found themselves in the back foot? What if they find themselves suddenly in a situation where it's like potentially Holland they're facing somewhere along the way, early. That's where it gets tricky.
Yeah, there's two schools of thought there. In a sense, you could argue, well, we're built to be on the back foot. That's what this team is made for. It's to be on the back foot and to pick you off. But if they go behind in a big game, their ability to chase, I think, comes majorly into question. And there'll be an anxiety in this England team because they know they won't have loads of goals in them. So you go a goal down with that kind of approach. And that, for Southgate, will be the most damning exit. In some respects, if England get knocked out in the quarter-final or semi-final losing 1-0, that's where there'll be a real sense a manager could have made the difference. Like, Brazil are going to pitch up akin to Claude Makelele in the Galactico days, looking at everybody ahead of him with their hands on their hips as the opposition break, saying, come on, Claude, do your thing.
Yeah.
Brazil will basically turn it around to Casemiro and saying,
there you go.
5 of us up here, you need to stop this.
Yeah.
So what wins out will decide Southgate's fate.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you play an attacking brand of football, you have a certain moral, well, look, we played the game the right way, it just didn't work out for us. Whereas bombing out, not quarter-final stages, playing defensive football with Grealish on the bench, Sterling or Foden on the bench, Maddison on the bench, not to mention Saka, that will be tarnishing to Southgate's legacy.
Yeah, and it's going to be warm as well too. Like, there's the degree of control you need to maintain. Harry Kane's tiredness is a big thing, I think, with England as well too, or supposed tiredness. Like, I mean, the whole plan does revolve around him. Like, there's no avoiding that, and to the point where they've done very little experimenting without him. If that suddenly becomes a problem, then it's like
they've Rashford or they've Callum Wilson.
Yeah, and the different. Sort of Rashford, different sort of skill set, and Wilson, okay, he's there as the alternative, but he's an inferior version, so it's sort of, like, I understand, like, you always end up sort of thinking with these teams, well, and I've sort of said there with France, like, you look at their form this year, and it's like, you sort of assume, maybe this wasn't that big a year for them, they're going to peak at the right time. And you sort of, it just becomes a thing that it's a hunch that you have there, that you assume, like, maybe form is just the form here. Maybe it's over. Maybe it's gone. Maybe it's just the voice has worked for a period of time, and then that life cycle reaches an end. Like, you talk about Martin O'Neill. Martin O'Neill had some campaigns where his way worked and it was fine, but then when the wheels come off once, they just sort of come off completely. And that's always the slight fear that you would have, that can a team who sort of ships forward home to Hungary's, like, talk about winning a World Cup 6 months later.
Very true. As Gary Neville asked Ian Hislop, is it coming home?
I would say it's not.
Yeah, no. I would say so too, I think. So, where are you staying in Qatar, by the way, as a final thought?
So not to be sort of flippant about it, but Qatar is so small that I'm sort of vaguely in the centre, but I'm not entirely sure where it is. You were in Brazil, right? You probably had to, similar to previous terms, you would have planned everything out a degree in advance. I'm going to be here, I'm going to be there. I'm in a central enough place for the entire competition. I haven't really sat down and looked at the logistics of where I am geographically, because you don't need to a point. Like, you're sort of going to get there and figure out what.
Are you in Doha?
I'm in Doha, yeah.
Is everyone in Doha?
Pretty much. I think obviously there's one stadium that's a little bit out of town, and I don't know if people are sort of staying around that area. I think a couple of teams have bases out there, but yeah, no, I'm in Doha. Sorry to answer the question.
It's a bit like an Olympic Games where you're in a city, really, as opposed to, certainly my sense of Brazil was meeting people at games, other journalists, and saying things like, I haven't seen you in 10 days, what you've been up to.
100%.
This is like the Rio Olympics as opposed to the Brazilian World Cup.
Yeah, no, it's more like an Olympics or like a summit or something, like, a web summit thing where like a lot of people are all in the same sort of area, And
Well, it won't be that bad. I know, I know this World Cup's grim and everything, but
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm going to stop there. But like there is that sort of slightly unusual aspect to it, that it's that whole travel angle and all these things.
Okay.
And
do you have to apply for accreditation for games? You know what games you're going to?
I have, but they've left it pretty flexible, because I don't know, is it because just people can leave it so late? It's sort of you can actually change 2 days before. You can do 2 days. You can do 2 games in a day, which I'm looking to do on a couple of occasions.
Well, this, in a way, and I don't think any journalists are making a big play of this or jumping up and down about this, because people have so many misgivings about this tournament. But for journalists, it will be the World Cup of a lifetime, in that the possibility of seeing 2 games in a day, previously impossible. But the thought for some journalists to go and see a 1 o'clock game and then have a bit of food and write their match report and go to a 7 o'clock game, I mean, it actually, in that sense, is a nice experience for lots of journalists. But it's very hard to even say that out loud for you, I would think.
Like, you just can't. Like, you can't. And like, I mean, and to be honest about it, that's also because maybe there's been so little focus on the football, really, is that certainly in my head, a lot of the stuff you're looking at going into it is not really been about the matches or the tournament or who can play. It's more like, how are you going to approach this and that?
Is it because you don't want to get asked to write 2 match reports? No. So if the Irish Independent are listening, you could do that. Well,
actually, Joe, we don't. We very rarely focus on the generic match report anymore. It's more about the stuff. It's the stuff around the games and plotting out where you can find people. But even sometimes going off the beaten track, you're guaranteed to sort of track down someone. Whereas here, so I think work-wise, probably going to be more challenging than it may appear. Than this 2 days, than this sort of 2 games a day paradise that it could be portrayed as, which I don't think that's going to be the case.
No, I'm sure.
Small violin here, very small.
There's various aspects to reporting this when you're not following a team. So in 2014, you and I think Out Malone met up with Martin O'Neill. I'm sure there are aspirations to track down Stephen Kenny, those kind of pieces as well.
Yeah, no, I tracked down O'Neill in Russia as well in 2018, and Stephen Kenny's out there for 5 days. Yeah, you'll always see what you can do like that, and that's what you see. The Scottish media out there trying to track down the Scottish manager. That's part of it, There's various people involved that you try and source and locate, and often, like as you mentioned previously, like your travel itinerary plays a big part in that.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's more probably hotel hunting.
Kevin Kilban's out there.
He's staying reasonably close to me.
Track him down if you can.
I have a feeling he's staying in the hotel of one of the top teams. I can let you tell him that himself.
One of the who?
I think you might be in the Brazilian one.
Okay, cool.
Possibly. Kev on detail. I mean, this is a couple of months ago, because he's done it for Canadian TV.
I look forward to using the Ecuadorian team in the lobby when you go to meet Kev for a coffee. Well, listen, very safe travels, and look forward to reading the work. And sure, I guess we'll touch base.
We'll catch up along
technology,
the way,
and you can check in and give us your experience. But enjoy it. I mean, these are. It's even.
No, you can't.
Such misgivings about this tournament. It's even hard to say that, isn't
it's
it?
different
Which
language.
is such a grim aspect to this whole thing. We can't even enjoy the thing, really.
Like, it's the greatest. Like, it's the greatest tournament, the greatest sports event for me. But like, I mean, it's. Yeah, there's a heavy asterisk and that sort of a little bit of guilt that sort of lingers there in any positive discussion of it.
And I should say, we've spoken off air about this. You sincerely feel this. I mean, it's
yeah.
A lot of misgivings about how to cover this, what to do, how to feel about it all.
Yeah, and sometimes that can seem a little bit performative then when you start talking about it on air, you know, when it's
Virtue signal.
it's a bit of that, and it's definitely very different than the discussions you're having with people coming up to. But then you're also conscious as well of knowing that this is it's a great thing to be able to go and do, and sort of being very entitled, like by sort of presenting that, oh God, I have to go and do this, which can also be very jarring as well.
Yeah.
Like something I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But it's something that you sort of, to do it properly, you have to go in with that with your eyes open.
Yeah. Well, enjoy. Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent will be chatting to you across the World Cup. Football on Off the Ball, brought to you by Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch big games from the Women's Super League live on Sky Sports.
This is News Talk.